All right, response to the last time I did this was pretty good, so I thought I would go a little bit further in this one and show basically how I get started on taking a finished design, or a mostly finished design, because sometimes they'll change while I'm doing the plans because I'll realize something going through. Lately, more and more, I've been designing the project in SketchUp completely without prototyping it. And then I, go part of the way into making the plans anyway, if I'm going to make plans for it, before I actually go out and start building it. And I don't prototype anything anymore. I just simply build it. So the first thing I'm going to do is run through some of the basics. I'm using SketchUp, and it's not a new version of SketchUp. It's SketchUp 8. A couple of people pointed that out to me in the last one of these, that I'm using an older model and that the newer one has more functionality. I'm using this version because it's the last free version that you can make plans with and sell the plans. Everything since then, you have to either use Pro, or you have to take the chance on getting nailed for using a product for commercial purposes. And believe me, I have enough to worry about without worrying about that. So here's what I have set up. I'm sorry, the cursor's not showing on the thing here. I turned it on in the next clip, but you'll have to, use your imagination a little bit with this one. I'm pointing to the side there. I'm showing that that's the way I have the toolbar set up. I have a toolbar across the top and one down the side. And the layout I have here, you can see that the entry info is at the top. Layers, my eyesight's not good. I'm straining to see this. Layers and scenes are stacked up in that position. Right next to that is the materials where I get the colors. And I actually have two pieces of masking tape on my screen out there that mark the locations of, it marks the location of those windows, or whatever they are called, so that I can line that up correctly. And also over on the side there where I can line up my screen captions, so I get consistent location every time. I won't have to go through and try to move everything around. All I need to do is line it up with that piece of masking tape, and then I'll have it there. And the reason why I have it laid out like this is that when I export the images from this, I'll be able to crop it down to a proper printer size paper sheet, which is 8.5 by 11, I think it is. So that positions all the parts, so none of them will be off of the page. Okay, what I'm doing here now is I'm saving this as the base model, I guess you could say, or backup without any changes made to it. And then I'm going to save it again as the plans. So that's the one that I'll actually work from to make the plans. In the meantime, I'll still have that original to go by if I ever need it. Okay, let's quickly run through some of the changes. I didn't make very many changes from the last time, but I made a couple. And the first one is at the end of the bar. Instead of using the toilet bolt alone, I made a piece of plywood that the bolt fits into, and that'll make it spread the load a bit better. And now up here at the front of the guide, I changed the thickness of the cam handle from 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch. The pivot blocks where the pin goes through, I added a little bit more material at the front there as well. It looked like it was a little bit skimpy before, so I added on to that. And here I'm hiding one of the rail parts so I can show you what I guess I could call the anchor block. And I tapered the front edge of that for the rub plate so that it could tip ahead. Like if I was just making this for myself, I wouldn't include that. I'll just do it in the shop. Okay, I unhide all the parts and bring it back out again. And what I need to do now is I need to create a bunch of layers. What goes on each individual layer is the captions that go on the screen, the dimensions and all that stuff, so they won't show up anywhere else. And then what I do is I go through and I make all of those scenes not visible, because that's one of the issues with SketchUp. It automatically makes a new, I keep saying scene, but it's layer. It automatically makes a new layer visible, so you have to uncheck all of those. And there is a way to make a layer so that it's not visible, but you have to, as far as I know, install a plugin for that. And it's called Add Hidden Layer. And I can do that at any time. I just find that it's a little bit more convenient to start off with more layers than I think I'll need. And then if I don't use them, I don't use them. It's not like they're taking up space. So the same deal again for scenes. I add 20 of those. And what the scenes are the individual pages for the plan. So I switch back to scene 1 and I'm locating the part properly because scene 1 is usually the first page in the plan, or it always is for me. So what I need to do now is I need to name these parts different things. When I first started making plans, I just gave parts a alphabetical label like A, B, C, D. Since, well, I guess from around 2 years ago, I started actually giving the parts names, like that first one will be top, and the next ones will be the rails. And I don't know, I think I need to designate these left and right because they're, even though they're identical, they're mirrored, so better to detail them in the plan separately. And then of course there's the cam. And here you can see where SketchUp is doing a crazy thing. It when you open that thing to name it, it automatically fills in the last thing that you did. So I don't know what that is. If anybody has an idea what that is or how to prevent that from happening, let me know. Okay, the pivot blocks next. And I don't know how to spell pivot. I think it has an O, not an I. And then we got 2 of those, so I'll name both of them. They're both identical anyway. So what have I got left to name? Yeah, I'm just going to skip through this. I give the rest of the parts names. Like that was the clamp block, and then there'd be the rub plate. Or maybe I won't skip through it. Maybe I'll go talk. Because, I had to do it. You should watch it. Okay, anchor block. And then I get to the end, and then I think that would be the end block. And below that, or above that, is the... See, this is a part that I had trouble coming up with a name for, because it's not immediately obvious what the name of this part would be. So I think I eventually settled on load spreader, because that's basically what it does. It spreads the load of the head of the toilet bolt out further. It's just a piece of 1/4-inch plywood that does that. And down underneath this, that spiffy wing nut that I modeled in another project, and I just moved it over here. That's the good thing about SketchUp, is you can move parts from different models over. All you need to do is copy it and then paste it right into the model. Okay, so I got all the parts named, I think. I'm trying to think if there's any that I missed, and I don't think there are. So what I'm doing now is I'm turning on layer 1 for the first scene. And here I'm using that little square masking tape to line up my page label up at the top there. This is, it names the page, straight edge guide, that's the first one. And as you can see, it's anchored on the page. It doesn't move around when the model moves. That happens when you click on the screen itself. It'll anchor itself to the screen. Okay, so you can see when you switch between scene 1 and scene 2, the straight edge guide label disappears because that layer is not visible on scene 2. All right, so I'm going to work on the cam first. And what I did here was I clicked on the part, so I selected it, and then there's another plugin that I use with this program that's called Hide All Unselected. So what it does is it just leaves the cam on the screen for me to work with, and it hides everything else. It doesn't delete the parts, they're just hidden, and they're hidden on this layer that's active. Then I can zoom in on that, and now I'm going to add the page label for this, and it'll be parts 1. So here I'm zooming in on the cam, and we're having a better look at it, and I'm spinning it around, and I'm changing the view on it to see which is the correct one that I want to work with, and that looks like it. And I'm going to change the camera, Here's the two options. You got perspective, which I normally work in, and when I want to detail a part like this, I'll change the camera to, I can't even remember what it is. Parallel projection, that's what it is. And I'm going to reposition it in the screen here, and what I need to do is open the part and add lines to it on this side because I'm not working. I could have reversed it and used the lines that are on the other side, but I'll add these quickly here. And what these are the pivot point and the center of the circle for the cam. And I need to add these to the model so that I'll have points that I can use for the dimension tool. The dimension tool in this is kind of strange in that it will not latch onto certain things. You need to add points and lines and stuff like that so that it will do it. And here I'm adding a reference point to the center of the circle and then to the center of the pivot point. And you can see there's 1/16 of an inch in the difference there. Now I'm measuring over to the tip, or the front of the handle over to the pivot point, and the end of the handle is a 1/2 inch. Now what I need to do, just for reference, is add a line here so that people will know how thick the handle is there. Like the overall dimensions of this cam handle, the handle part, are not important at all. But if you want to make it exactly like this, you can use this line that I'm adding here, this dimension, I guess. So top down to that, and 7/8, and it shows a point where it starts to curve. All right, now I'm adding labels to the areas that need them. And I can see I've got a problem with the naming of my cam handle. It's -R. So that's a 3/8 inch hole, which is 10 millimeters. I label that. I add metric dimensions to all my plans so that you have both imperial and metric on the same sheet to go by, whichever way you lean. All right, so I'm also labeling the center of the circle, and I had to pause to think about the name for that. So that's tricky to come up with all these names for things. And I was about to misspell pivot again. And then, the label for the cam handle, I figure I should go up and I should change that to cam handle instead of cam handle -R. And that's basically it for the dimensioning of that part. I'll add this caption up at the top here that says the cam handle is made from 3/4 inch 19 millimeter plywood or solid wood. That gives the thickness of it. So that's a dimension that you don't need. And I just got distracted with something there. And it says, see the build article for more details on how to, I was going to say layout, but make this part. Okay, so I'm looking it over. I think I have everything. I'm going to change this top dimension up here from 3 1/16 to 3 inches because 3 1/16 is nonsense. You don't need a 16th there. And so I closed that and I went back out. And that was to show you that this is on page 2 or scene 2. So everything's there. You can switch back to scene 1, which is the opening page, and you see that. And I think I changed the animation time. That was a little slow. I changed that down to 0.5, and you'll see what difference that makes. Quicker, it flicks between them really fast. Now what I do, and I don't normally do this while I'm doing the plan, not page by page. I usually do this afterwards. I'll go through the whole thing and I'll add the metric dimensions. But this is just to show you exactly what I do. If SketchUp would automatically put both in there, if there was an option to do that, that would be awesome, but it doesn't. And sometimes it gets a little bit hairy when you have a lot of dimensions on the screen, like positioning them so they'll be clear. When you open the page, I want to be able to see all the dimensions immediately without trying to, zoom in on this or zoom in on that. I want a clear print, basically, when Like when people print the plan, I want them to be able to see all of the dimensions that this part is supposed to be showing. All right, that about wraps it up. That's how I start to make plans. You can see it gets pretty involved, especially if the project is big. Like the one that took me the most time, I'm pretty sure, to do this with, not the design to begin with, was the belt grinder. That was a big plan. And that took many, 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 many hours. Since then, I've gotten a lot more efficient. I'm a lot better at doing this. So I don't think it would take me nearly as long now. But it still takes a considerable amount of time to go through a plan. And then a big part of that is going through it again and again and again, looking for errors and things that you left out, because I've made the plan, I've gone through it like a dozen times, and I'll go through it again and I'll see, look, I missed a dimension there. So a lot of time involved in doing this for not very much. You really can't sell these plans, especially something like this. You really can't sell it for a lot. I mean, people are going to look at it. If the plan for this is $20 and the retail version of this is $45, they're going to say, why would I buy the plans for $20 and then I have to have all this other stuff to make it with? Why don't I just go buy that? So that's the reality of it. This thing is not going to sell much. I originally wasn't going to make plans for it, but I figured I'm doing it. It's a project that sells. It's something that sells at retail, so that means that people are interested in it. So if I make plans for it, some will sell, and I might get paid back for all the time that I spent doing it.